Do you think the morning of December 7th, 1941, held only the wail of air raid sirens and a sky filled with zeros? Imagine that offshore of Oahu, a steel city from 2017 suddenly appears, the USS Gerald R. On its radar screens, bright specks stretch into a ribbon, and the clock is counting down. In a few minutes, history will either fork or sink to the seabed with thousands of lives. If you want to know who pulls the trigger first and what the price will be, subscribe to the channel right now. That morning began like every other morning on Oahu. The sea was flat as glass. Sunlight poured over the barracks, and the smell of weak coffee drifted on the wind. At Pearl Harbor, the guards changed shifts, and a few sailors laughed about a quiet day. No one heard war rolling in on the waves. Then, beyond the horizon, a shadow rose, not a battleship, not an oil tanker. It was too long. Its deck was flat as a runway. An island tower rose like a building. Along the hull, the white letters Gerald R. Ford flared. It was something not of 1941, like a page of history dropped into this morning by mistake. The ship slid over the water with cold confidence, as if the ocean itself had to yield. On shore, people squinted, their mouths spilling out a sentence they could not believe. Deep in the ship's belly, the Combat Information Center snapped bright. The radar sweep turned, and then the contacts appeared not scattered, but drawn into a band, flying straight for Oahu. They weren't seabirds, and the clock began. If a warship in 1941 was steel, steam, and gigantic guns, then the black mass offshore looked like a city that ran itself. The USS Gerald R. Ford is about 1,100 feet long, its flight deck flat and wide. Beneath the steel are two nuclear reactors that turn the ocean into stubborn, lasting power. Its modern radar scans so far the sky has nowhere left to hide. It doesn't just see a target, it reads its altitude, speed, and heading like words on a page. On deck, an air wing can hold 75 aircraft, Super Hornets to intercept, F-35CS to see, and shoot first, Growlers to snap communications, and helicopters to hunt low targets. Around the hull, layers of defense linked together, from surface-to-air missiles to rapid-fire guns, like doors slamming shut in the face of anything that rushes in. But today's opponent is not naive. Out in the Pacific, 6 Japanese carriers Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, and Zuikaku carry about 353 aircraft, split into 2 waves, trained until every dive feels like a rite. They came to seize surprise, to break morale, to turn one morning into a national scar. And right here, the first crack in the future shows itself. The Ford has no dense escort group, no safety net built to full modern standards. It's standing near Pearl Harbor like a giant walking alone. Technology can open eyes, but war can still stab from a dark corner. One slow moment, one wrong decision is enough. Even steel can feel pain if it's hit in the right place. Everyone believes they hold the advantage. And that is when mistakes happen most easily. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow for more. On the flight deck of a Japanese carrier, the briefing unfolds. No long speeches. Just maps, a finger stabbing toward Oahu, and a command. Fly low, keep radio silence, hit the rendezvous point, then dive. The pilots cinch their chin straps tight, their shared glance an unspoken oath. At that exact moment, deep inside the USS Gerald R. Ford, the combat center flares to life. The radar sweep is steady, then a ribbon of bright dots appears, running straight toward the islands. Evenly spaced, a disciplined formation. The computers predict their track, drawing a red arrow across the screen. An officer asks, "Rules of engagement?" The reply is even shorter. "Launch." The deck wakes. Aircraft roll onto painted lines, engines roar, and heat slams into faces. One by one, Super Hornets surge forward, shrinking into black specks against a blue sky. But on the frequency, there's a terrifying silence. The 2017 identification system can't name a 1941 aircraft. Is it an ally? One wrong decision turns salvation into guilt. High above, the intercept flight claims the better geometry. The Japanese formation on the screen splits into clusters, yet holds its course. They fly steady, believing the base ahead is still asleep. They don't see the enemy, but the enemy has been watching them for a long time. Super Hornets lock targets, and the fire command drops. MRAMs peel off the rails, and heartbeats later, several aircraft flare into wordless fireballs. Japanese pilots yank their sticks, searching for the attacker, but find only shredded metal spinning in the sunlight. The formation buckles. Discipline cracks. They try the radio, and only static floods in. The Growler doesn't need bullets. It just cuts their voices. They're sealed inside their cockpits, alone. Some dive low to escape, but that just makes them easier to harvest. Above, the interceptors reposition, strike, and reposition again. In minutes, dozens of aircraft from the first wave are torn from the sky. The survivors press on, a braid of fear, fury, and blindness. But just as every eye on the Ford is pinned to the heavens, another alarm blooms deep in the ship lower, heavier. Not from the air, but from the sea. A narrow signature, thin as a needle stitch, slides beneath the surface, angling straight toward Ford. Too small, too quiet, too patient. Someone says, barely breathing, something's bottom hugging. Torpedoes. The giant ship can see for hundreds of kilometers, but a needle in the right place can rip its steel hull apart. An order snaps out. Deploy anti-submarine search. A helicopter punches into the wind, dropping sonar buoys. The Ford yaws and accelerates, breaking its posture, but it must keep launching fighters, keep breathing while running, keep shielding Pearl while saving itself. Then, another dot appears from Pearl's direction. An American 1941 aircraft has taken off, with no modern transponder. To the system, it's just an unknown target flying into the kill zone. The watch team holds fire, ordering a visual ID. That moment of humanity opens a gap, thin as a hair. A leftover Japanese element slips through, low and fast. Minutes later, black smoke climbs from Pearl. One warship takes a heavy hit. Pearl doesn't collapse, but it bleeds. Thanks for watching, and be sure to follow for more. At 7:55 a.m., Pearl Harbor is no longer a drowsy harbor. It's a body jolted awake by pain. The sirens scream. Footsteps hammer down steel stairs. Anti-aircraft guns swing their barrels like wrists turning a knife. Black smoke coils upward, and the stink of burning oil clings to the sea wind. But unlike the history we remember, this time the base wakes up one heartbeat earlier, the heartbeat that decides survival. Soldiers aren't firing blindly. They have warnings, time to yank ammunition from crates. On the water, rescue crews charge toward the flames, dragging men from smoke-choked passages. On the USS Ford, the Combat Information Center is cold and silent. They've seen a ruthless truth. A few seconds' delay can turn absolute advantage into real injury. Squadrons are reshuffled, and a protective ring is pulled tighter. Fresh fighters climb, spreading an invisible umbrella over Pearl. But strange signals from beneath the surface hint that the war isn't just in the sky. As fires rage, a new sweep appears on screen. A second wave of attackers is coming from the northeast, steady and heavy as a drumbeat. This isn't surprise anymore, it's rage. Japan will not be broken easily. On shore, barrels lift. At sea, the Ford closes its defenses. The sky prepares to be torn open one more time. By 8:40 a.m., the second wave swells on the display. The Japanese pilots fly inside their anger, trying to reclaim the advantage of surprise they lost. They drop low, splitting formations and spearing straight into Oahu. But Pearl Harbor is no longer asleep. On land, tracer rounds cut a bright net across the sky. At sea, patrol fighters clamp shut like a vice. Growlers smear noise across the air, turning Japanese orders into static. Super Hornets and F-35s take turns, locking targets from beyond sight, then sliding in close. Each time a missile leaves a wing, a bite is taken out of the Japanese formation. One pilot sees Pearl Harbor glittering in the distance, thinks he still has time to drop his bomb and rescue honor, then realizes the sky ahead is empty. His comrades have vanished. By 9:50, the second wave is no longer a planned attack. It's a ragged flight, leaving smoke trails like erased lines. In Ford's command center, a new arrow is drawn, pointing into the ocean where the Japanese carriers are pulling away. The sky has new owners. Now it's time to find the ones who started it all. At 9:55 a.m., with the smoke still hanging over Oahu, Ford doesn't rest. The moment you believe you've won is the moment you're most vulnerable. A hot point flares on the map offshore, where the Japanese fleet is withdrawing. A counterpunch is launched. 20 Super Hornets armed with harpoons and guided bombs, backed by Growlers and F-35s. At 10:35, the harpoons peel away, skimming the waves like silent spears. Guided bombs fall on laser threads, slicing through decks. In less than 20 minutes, one carrier is burning. A second lists sharply, bleeding speed. A third has its flight deck ripped open. The remaining ships turn and run, dragging a force that has lost both its advantage and its nerve. Ford doesn't chase. It turns back to hold the sky over Pearl, understanding that one more miscalculation will make history bleed again. And as the sea settles, a cold question hangs in the air. If you bend December 7th, 1941, by only a little, which way will the rest of the world bend with it? To see what happens next, tell me in the comments. Do you choose to hunt them down to the end, or stop to keep balance?